So this is like a presenter's worst nightmare to have this kind of voice. I am so sorry, and I hope you can hear me well enough. I think as a result of this, I hope that as much as you can, share your own insights with each other. That would be hugely valuable. So nothing like getting you all to join in the discussion than me not being able to talk. In this webinar, we're going to focus on a couple of things. First of all, I want to talk about why partner. Let's start here. So we often take it for granted that people understand why we're bringing them together to partner on something, but we don't always. There are a variety of reasons why we might want to partner and what we want to partner to achieve. So we want to start out by talking about some of the different options so that we can be more deliberate in our own objectives for bringing people together. We'll spend about 30 minutes talking about that. The next thing I want to do is really introduce you to some of the leading models, frameworks, and principles for effective cross-sector collaboration that we're finding described in the literature. The reason I want to really bring these forth to you is that again, there are many different objectives for partnership. And depending on your objective, there might be different things that you want to focus on or prioritize in terms of how you support the collaborative initiative. And so I want to at least start to make you familiar with these models and frameworks so that you can pick the one that best resonates with your own collaboration and use that as a guide for your efforts. So today, it's more of a quick show and tell. I want to get these in front of you. All of the papers that describe these models in more detail are going to be given to you in a zip file, so you'll have them to read more. My other objective today is to also really learn from you all which constructs within these models and frameworks you feel you're doing particularly well in your partnerships, because we want you to be able to share those insights about how and why. We also want to know which of these constructs you think are most important for your own collaborations, but that you're struggling with the most, because that's going to give us more specificity about what we want to help you with. So we're going to spend a lot of time going through the models and doing some surveys with you all to really understand where you are. So this webinar is really only a first step in getting this conversation going. This first step is getting you exposed to the ideas and the constructs and the models and learning from you what you think is most important so that we can facilitate discussion with you all, among you all, because you're the experts on how to do this best in your communities in New York. So we want to try to facilitate as much discussion as possible, and it's only going to start today. The next thing we want to do is to, again, just spend time sharing strategies with each other. So let's get going. First of all, let's talk about why partnering. There's an article that I really want to point you to. The reference is in the bottom right corner, and there's a great quote here. Instead of me reading it to you, I'm going to ask you to read this yourself and really think about this.
Our central administration is in 329. Yeah.
Okay, let me know if you all can't see the slide here, but I'm thinking you could probably read this better without me reading it over you. I want you to keep this in mind as we go through the next slides. I want you to be thinking about in what ways are the partnerships that you're trying to foster greater than what the individual partners can do on their own. Okay, so in terms of partnership synergy, it's really about the extent to which the involvement or contribution of different partners improves the ability of the partnership too. So in this article, it really starts to talk about some of the ways in which we realize partnership synergy. We're going to go through this list and pop up a survey because I want to know what resonates here. Okay. So without further ado, let's get our first survey up. Pam, can you launch the survey? It's the same list. I want you to check all of the items that apply here. Think about when you're nurturing your own partnerships, what is it you're trying to get out of it? What are the priorities? Is it that you're trying to get your partners to work in creative, holistic, and practical ways? You're trying to develop realistic goals that are widely understood and supported? That you're planning and carrying out comprehensive interventions that connect multiple programs, services, and sectors? The work that doesn't often happen within those programs, services, and sectors. This is that you're trying to understand and document the impact of actions, collaborative actions, or actions within the partners that don't get documented in a bigger way beyond sort of the process outcomes that we all track. Is it that we're incorporating the perspectives and priorities of community stakeholders, including the target population? So that we're trying to communicate how the partnership's actions will address community problems, again, that are in a way that's bigger than the individual partner's own actions. Is it that we're trying to obtain or additional community support? Or is it none of the above and something else? So Pam, are you able to launch the first poll? Oops. Again, remember that you can select as many options as apply. What I want you to think about here is which of these components are you excelling at? Which of these do you feel like you're doing particularly well?
Okay, we're going to get ready to wrap up the polling. I'll give you another couple seconds, and so go ahead and submit. Make sure you press the submit button at the bottom to submit your answers. Okay, gone ahead and closed the poll, and we'll go ahead and share the results for you all to see.
Okay, so developing realistic goals that are widely understood and supported is a very common objective. We see a lot of variation across the others. Obtaining community support, also very important. And interestingly, nobody else selected none of the above. If anybody has any ideas about things that they're striving to achieve through partnership that aren't on this list as we keep going, type it into the chat box, raise your hand to share it. Okay. It's interesting to me to see that all of these partnership synergy sort of components showed up in your responses. Next, we're gonna revisit the same options. What I want to know here is which components of partnership synergy do you most want help improving, knowing how to do? So this is your chance to let us know that this is something you'd like more advice and support with. So we're going to relaunch the same survey, but this time, instead of asking you what you excel at, we want you to check the components of partnership synergy that you want the most help with. Sorry, I think it's taking a minute to get the survey launched to you. But in the meantime, just be thinking about what you want to answer. Again, we're going to ask you, which of these items would you like more support with? Oh, great, it's already up there.
Okay, we're getting close to about 50% responding. If I can give you just a couple more seconds, make sure you hit submit at the bottom after you've selected your options. All right, I'm going to close this poll and I'll share the results with you.
Okay. So again, take a look at the sort of spread here. What this says to me is that many of you are doing well on different components of partnership synergy, but others across all of the same ones would also like more support. There's not any one that really jumps out here. So that positions us super well to really help each other learn. So I'll make sure that we come back to this at the end. I think a lot of what I'm going to say in the rest of this presentation will help give us more thoughts about how we can support these components of partnership synergy. But we're going to come back to this in particular, this list at the end. At the end of the presentation, so you can really share insights with each other. Okay, so moving on. Next question. So this leads to the question about objectives. So I've just shown you some characteristics of partnership synergy, some pieces of what might comprise your objective for partnering. And I wonder, at this point in time, when you think about your own partnership, and you think about everybody who's coming, collaborating with you in your system building work, I wonder if you think that everybody has a good understanding and the same understanding, right? Because it matters. We all have to be on the same page of what the partnership's objectives are. So pause for a minute and think about that. I'm going to launch a survey because I'm curious where you feel like you are. Okay, make sure you click submit.
Okay, we'll give it just a couple more seconds and then we will close this poll. All right, I'm going to end this poll and we'll go ahead and share the results with you.
Okay, great. So about 61% feel that the objective is clear and shared, and about 39% feel like it's not. So let's keep going because I want to show you some of the more common objectives, and I want you to think about whether of those that said that your objective is known, whether it could be improved upon. And for those of you that don't have an objective stated, I want you to think about which of these might resonate with you. So when I've been reviewing models and frameworks and principles and literature about collaborations that have used each. And across this work, it was very interesting to me to see the diversity of objectives. But there really are starting to be some themes. So here's what I saw. First of all, to learn across objectives, resources, and barriers. Sorry, I didn't word this very well, but across the system or the institution or the sectors or the disciplinary boundaries that comprise a bigger initiative. So that the goal of it here is learning together so that we can go back and inform the partners' efforts to, the words they used, change the text in their respective organizations. Change the text really means change how the practices and procedures for how work is done by frontline staff in the respective organizations. So the work isn't necessarily collaborative action, it's collaborative learning so that we can come back and really change what's done within our organizations so that they're better aligned. The second objective is to develop strategies to collaborate better at the intersection of the partners. For example, to share information, to share data, to come up with a common shared referral form, to support patient transitions. So to develop strategies to collaborate better at the intersection of the partner's work. The third objective is to collaborate to solve a problem or to create a resource needed by many partners. So again, to create that shared database or training program. Of course, this one's related to number 2. 2 is more strategic planning, but 3 is about coming up with a solution. Number 4 is to raise awareness of an issue in your community. Okay. Advocacy, whatever you want to call this, really trying to make sure people appreciate that there's a need or a challenge. Number 5 is to better understand the common or shared needs in your community. Each of our agencies supports different individuals. So trying to come together to really figure out what is needed collectively so that we can raise that up in a bigger way. Number 6 is to push for practice or policy change in your community. And I like to use this notation of little p and big P, practice and policy. You can make really big change by changing the little p practices and policies that are not, necessarily formalized. They might be informal. Whereas the big P policy is maybe the state level, the higher level practice guidelines, for example, and policies. So we should be thinking about how we can change the little p and the big P practice and policies, but that's what Objective 6 is all about across the community. Objective 7 is to support a systemic intervention. What I mean here is changing the environment. So I talked a lot about this in my keynotes presentation back in May when we were all together in person. The system building, one component of it that often gets forgotten is that when we come together and learn about what the barriers are in supporting our families, our mothers, we might realize that there's a barrier that we can't necessarily, it's not internal to what we do. It's something in the environment. It may be a social determinant. But if we can't address that, there's always going to be a limit to the impact that we can have within our organization. So Objective 7 is going about making change in the environment, not just the practice and policy within our community, but changing the environment, changing the social determinants perhaps, or creating a resource that didn't exist before in the community. Objective 8 is something else. So I'm curious to hear what you think we're missing. So the next poll here, I want you to really reflect on these objectives and tell me which ones are consistent with your own objectives. For those of you that said you have objectives, which ones of these are consistent? You can check more than one. For those of you that don't, that said that you don't have clear objectives, which of these feel right? So if we could launch this poll.
Okay, and about half of the group has responded. So if you can go ahead and click and make sure you hit submit to transmit the results over to us. We'll give you another couple seconds. All right, and I'm going to end this poll. And here are the results.
Okay, so the most popular is number 2, developing strategies at the intersection of partners. That suggests learning is very important to your initiatives. And one thing that we'll want to talk about when we get to the end is, so how do you see that learning through? What whose charge is it to get the action done, to take those strategies and really make them happen? There's a great comment in the chat box by Carol. She says, in terms of the objectives, I asked you to tell me yes or no, whether your objectives are clearly stated. And very rightly, she says, I don't think it's a yes or no question. There's some understanding of some objectives, but not complete understanding of all. And, as we talk through the models, I hope you come to appreciate how important having this shared vision, this common understanding is. I would encourage you to think about how you can push for that, for full clarity and understanding of the objectives. Again, it's really interesting to me to see that that a lot of these objectives are represented. And I think that over time across, within a given partnership, you're gonna transition from one objective to another. I often find in the partnerships I support, there's this natural progression between learning and action. So again, the number 2 versus number 3, getting to action. And of course, we also sort of might move our focus from more internal to more external. Once we know that we need action, we might need to go and get community buy-in so that we can support the action. So I guess I want to point out that these objectives are likely to change over time, but so should your approach to the partnership work. Okay, if anybody answered 8, something else, I wonder if you could raise your hand and describe it. anything feel missing here? Oh, nobody answered 8. Okay, sorry. Be thinking about again what might be missing. So I want us to have a little bit of discussion about, you all sharing insights about how you've made progress, not just like how you suddenly fell into something going well, but really how you made progress after some thinking and effort on some aspect of partnership synergy that others want help with, which was pretty much everything. But first, before we do this, let's look at some of the most important determinants of partnership synergy that can inspire your thoughts about how synergy happened. So here we are. Here are some of the most important determinants of partnership synergy. First of all, resources. But going beyond just what we often think of as resources, money, we also need to think about having space, a place to meet. And that it's not just having a place, it's having the right kind of place that's going to facilitate the right kind of interaction. Skills and expertise, information, connections to people, organizations, groups. We need endorsements of our work and convening power. Partner characteristics, we want to have the right amount of heterogeneity. If we have a bunch of people who come together and know the same thing, we're not really pushing our learning. Level of involvement needs to be appropriate. Relationships among partners, there needs to be trust, respect. We don't want conflict. If there are power differentials, we need to know it and we need to really manage that thoughtfully. Partnership characteristics like leadership, administration and management. What I mean by administration and management, things like do we have outreach, orientation, and logistical supports? Do we have analysis and support for analysis and documentation within our meetings? Do we have good communication support? In terms of leadership, just going back up one, these are different skills than what makes somebody a good leader maybe within their own organization. Here, a leader, the skills that we really need is somebody who can manage adaptive change, somebody who can really guide learning and action in a changing world, somebody who can be inclusive, somebody who's got a growth mindset that can help navigate the differences among the partners. So think about the characteristics of what would make someone a good leader in a partnership and how that differs from other types of effective leaders. Governance, what I mean here is how we decide who is involved, how decisions are made, how the partnership does its work. This is greater than any one leader. What I'm talking about here are the processes for doing this. And it can take lots of different forms, but what matters is partners' comfort with decision-making processes, support for the decisions that are made, and approval of the timing, the pace of work. Is it going too fast? Is it going too slow? Efficiency is how well the partnership is using its resources. And then in terms of the external environment, the factors here are community characteristics and public and organizational policies. When I say public and organizational policies, what I'm thinking about are things like short-term funding. And we have this norm of a lot of our funding is short-term, which makes it hard to really grow our partnership synergy. Categorical program requirements, the same thing. They can really be a barrier. Inadequate funding for the administration of partnerships. In terms of community characteristics, I'm thinking about things like history of cooperation and trust in the community. Is there this sense of competition for resources? How are interpersonal politics? And logistics. Can people convene? Is your community big geographically, so travel time is hard, or is parking hard? Is transportation available? So these are some of the determinants of how well we can realize partnership synergy. I found that list very helpful. So my question here is, let's start to share some insights about how you all have made progress on some aspects of partnership synergy. And here again are the different aspects of partnership synergy. I wonder, this is your time to share. Raise your hand and we'll call on you, unmute. And I think you all can also unmute yourselves. It doesn't look like we have a mad rush, but I would really appreciate it if anyone could share any insights from their past attempts to grow partnership synergy, any strategies to share. So there's a question about whether we're focusing more on large group partnerships or partnerships with individual organizations. I think either one is okay. What I think we really have in mind here is partnerships with 2 or more organizations, what I would call cross-system or cross-sector collaboration, not just one-on-one partnerships. But the 2-way partnerships can also, do we need to think about synergy? So it's okay to reply either way. So Lara, is it Lara Madison? Could you say a little bit more about what you typed in? Oh, okay, so sorry about that. Lara says she has no mic, but what she said is community-based bulletin sharing resources for women and children benefits clients as well as CBOs. Okay. If anybody else has anything to share about strategies that they've used to really improve partnership synergy, please shout out. Otherwise, I'll keep going. Okay, so Hunter.
Hold on 1 second, Kristen. Cheryl actually has a question. Cheryl, I went ahead and unmuted you, so you should be able to contribute.
Okay, is it working?
Yep, yeah. We can hear you.
Great. So we have been rallying around the objective of incorporating preconception into conception care into routine services with our partners and our larger coalition. That's been a rally to get us to the that longer term objective that we've all agreed on. And then we've been working, so we've been looking at having people determine what they may already be doing in that vein so we can then beef it up, and then doing some work with individual partners to connect goals, things that they're already involved with. For example, with our Head Start partners, there have been new regulations for Head Start that can be met by addressing the interconception work that we're having our partners do. And that's allowed us to come in and start looking at their intake forms, build policy or building resources so that their staff can start engaging in conversations with the moms and the dads that come into the Head Start. And we're looking at developing the practice flows so that we can make sure it's happening, and data to track the impact, whether or not it's being done, and then the impact of all of that. And sharing that at our larger partner meeting again, and looking at the hooks that people can start engaging in this work that we've agreed to do.
That's awesome. And I'm curious what you're most proud of in your work to date. What was the biggest challenge you faced, and how did you work through it?
I think the first step in the process is one that we're particularly pleased about, changing the intake forms of the Head Start program that's working with us, because that's the foundation that's going to drive our ability to be successful in this. and having them also make changes in their data system so that they can track these variables that we're identifying. And with a recent published article on what indicators can be, then having the ability to assess the achievement of that at this local level, at the individual client level. So those are things we're excited about.
What allowed you to be able to do that? How did you get that to happen?
We had attended one of the Head Start's Health Advisory Committee meetings where they were reporting out on their requisite data around childhood obesity and other issues that impact the child's ability to learn. And we then entered into a conversation about the impact of the birth outcomes and how that's related to what they're striving to achieve in the Head Start framework. And that opened the door for them to engage in a deeper conversation with us around this work and pique their interest. We also then, because of the Head Start rules, it requires parents to be involved in decision-making and policy changes. So we then presented to the Policy Council and again could describe the benefit for them as individual parents on their own health and the health of their children to get them to buy in and say that they want Head Start to move forward with this.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I think some of the resources here where you got, connections to people, endorsements, in a way you sort of got this convening power. That's wonderful. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to share? Okay, assuming not, let's keep going because I want to really get some models in front of you. I'm going to spend about the next 30 minutes talking through these models and we'll try to get some discussion in here too. I picked these models because I think they all kind of look at collaboration and partnership in different ways. And again, as we go through, I want you to be thinking about which framework is most helpful to you. I'm going to ask you at the end, so be prepared for that. And the reason I want to ask is because that's going to help us know how to help you better after this webinar. So be thinking about which one of these most resonates with you when you think about the partnership that you're supporting right now. Okay, so the first is the internal coalition outcome hierarchy. So this is really what this is about. They are trying to address social determinants of health in their local communities. So the objective is to make environmental change. This model is informed by group theory. It was really designed for their evaluation, the evaluation of how well their collaboration was doing. But what they realized was that the model proved very useful when used up front, when you're really thinking about how to plan a partnership, a collaboration, and even throughout the partnership to really make sure that it was staying on track. So the idea here is that there are three things that we care about achieving in collaborative work. 3 levels. One is process, which is on the bottom, the base of this figure, outcomes, and process. They tried to lay out what they thought was most important about each. So the basic idea here is when we think about process, we want to make sure, and I'm starting from the bottom and I'll read up, we want to make sure that we have sufficient resources. It's a solid foundation for everything else. A lot of partnerships, when you get together, if you're not sufficiently resourced, we're going to see this in model after model to support the partnership. The will alone is hard. It's not enough to keep these going. We need to have some resources. We also have to have some early and ongoing wins. We need completed activities so that we see progress. We need diverse participation. Talked about that a little bit already so that we can, as a partnership, realize partnership synergy, see things differently and really be able to learn from that. We want rewarding relationships within the partnership. I've moved into outcomes here. We want to make sure that we're developing relationships among partners and between partners and sort of the outside community that are rewarding, that feel satisfying, so that our partners are willing to keep engaging. We want to grow new knowledge, and we want to develop new training so that within our partnership and within our community, we feel like there's learning happening. And that learning is also going to drive action. We think about the collaborative, what we're doing within the partnership. We want to make sure that we're efficient. You all are aware of this, but it can be hard, as we're trying to figure out what to do. So part of my hope about presenting these models is that we can be very deliberate about how we engage our partners. And just to talk a little bit about where we're going in the next webinar, this webinar is more about the partnership and what matters about how we partner. The next webinar next month is going to start to put some methods, like some ideas about what do we put on the agenda to make our work efficient. Okay, at the highest level here, we want to make sure and remember that our goal is to develop a shared, social vision, rather than having sort of diffuse vision of what our impact is going to be. That keeps our eye on the ball, make sure that we're all on the same page. So I'm curious, which components of this model do you feel are going particularly well for you? And ask you going well, and then we'll do a poll after this where I ask you about what you're struggling with. And while you can check all that apply, I want you to check those that are going the most well here. So if we could launch the next survey, I want you to think about, again, which components of this framework are going the best for you all in your own partnerships.
Okay, you're going to see 2 questions at the same time. The first question is, how are things going well? And the other one is, what would you like help with? Please make sure to answer both questions and hit submit once you've answered both questions. Okay, we've got about 50% of people have responded. I'll give you a couple more seconds, and then if you can wrap it up, make sure you hit submit. All right, and we'll go ahead and end this poll. And let's share those results as well.
Okay, so diverse participation is the most checked thing that's going well, which is awesome. And we see some success in a lot of these factors. Can we see the poll results for the things that are maybe not going as well?
It should be, it's question number 2 on the same poll. If you move on down, you should see the results for that one as well.
Oh, that's perfect. Scroll down. That's wonderful. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is collaborative and efficient partnership practices, so with a close second being sufficient resources. So those are things that we're going to want to try to address at the end of the discussion. For those of you that have had success in that, please remember, I'm going to ask you to call it out. And if anybody wants to say anything real quick right now, anyone that has really found a win in terms of collaborative and efficient partnerships or sufficient resources, so please share it. Why don't what we'll do because I don't want to I don't want to make us sort of pause here. What I want you guys to do is, if you could write down, make a note for yourself. If you have a success story to share for the top ranked struggles that others are expressing, let's go through all the models, and toward the end, I'll ask you to start sharing those instead of doing this along the way. Okay, so the next slide. The next model is the Healthy Alliances, or the Hall framework. So this is a framework that was developed using a participatory action research approach. So there were a number of partnerships or collaborations that were sort of doing this self-study as they went to try to figure out what they could do differently to improve the partnership. And a couple of things I want to call out to your attention that are useful references in this article and articles that it points to are that they have developed a coordinated action checklist and methods that can help our partnership give feedback and guide discussion about how the partnership can improve. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. They also identified a couple of different assessment tools, simpler ones that can help. So Petty's Ladder of Participation and Rifkin's Participation Measurement Instrument. These can be used to help you sort of self-study your own partnership strategies and learn how to improve those. Through this work, through the self-study, they concluded that there are 3 clusters of factors that either hinder or facilitate the success of alliances. And these are institutional factors, personal factors of participants in the alliance, and factors relating to the organization of the alliance, the 3 factors that we see here. And they're all interconnected. When I say institutional factors, I'm referring to the circumstances or incentives that are rooted in the institutional and economic environment of the organizations that participate in the alliance. So the partners' home organizations, there are factors within their own institutions that really matter, including their policies, their planning horizons, and their funding. So I want you to think about how institutional factors in your partners' organizations can either support or hinder your collaboration. The next are upper right. Partners also bring in their own personal characteristics and individual opinions about working together. So we're going to distinguish attitudes and beliefs, self-efficacy, social identity, and personal relationships. So when I say attitudes, I'm including things like attitudes about working across sectors or organizational boundaries. Does this seem like something people are open to or not? Task and time perceptions. Different stakeholders see this kind of partnership work as either in the scope of their day job, sometimes, other times outside the scope of their day job. And that has ramifications for how you are going to convene your partners and ask them to work. So be mindful of that. Attitudes, another important category of attitudes is this attitude that all members, all partners, their perspective is valuable. We don't want to work from preconceived ideas or assumptions about what each other does. We want to spend some time within our partnership, building a sense of mutual value. We all have something to contribute. We all have a different way of working toward the problem that we're collaboratively working on. And then attitudes of tolerance, respect, and trust. So very important, and it's worth spending time growing those within our partnerships. Social identity, what I mean by that is that we also want to invest in creating a shared identity within the partnership that contributes to their own personal self-image. So if you can think about ways to create this shared identity within the partnership that matter to partners, that are valuable to partners, they're going to be your partners are going to be much more engaged. So think about how you can do that. How can you grow this shared identity? In terms of personal relationships, we want to make sure within our partners that we build our partnerships, that we build them. Try to create this environment of trust. Try to help your partners have fun when they're doing work together. Again, investing in these things might feel like it's not efficient, but it really, really matters. Bottom box, the organization of alliance. These factors are really critical because they're how we start to sort of deal with what we have to work with in terms of what's coming from the institutional and the interpersonal boxes. So here, thinking about things like flexible time frame. How flexible is the time frame that we have to work on things? We want to make sure that the time frame, the flexibility of our time frame matches the objective that we're working on. And just make sure that we have a shared understanding of the time frame we're working on. Do individual partners have clear ideas about their roles and responsibilities? Do we have a formal and effective and supported communication structure? How about the management structure? We've already talked a little bit about this. Do we have a shared mission? Is it truly shared, and is it explicit? And are we building on capacities? Do we know what the capacities, the strengths of our partners are? And are we leveraging those in what we're doing deliberately? Visibility is about, can we make the partnerships work visible when there are successes that are really coming from the partner's contribution? We want to make them visible. This is going to affect again, this idea of social identity. Okay, so there's a lot of factors here, and it really is the intersection of all of these that helps determine how effective our collaborations are in achieving their objectives. So, just as we've done with the other models, I'm curious to know which components of the Hall framework you feel are going particularly well, or that you feel like you need the most help with. We're going to launch the 2 surveys just like before.
All right, the survey is launched, so just go ahead and answer your questions and make sure to hit submit. There are 2 questions once again with the what is going well and what you need help with. Okay, just a couple more seconds, so go ahead and get your answers in. Make sure you hit submit. All right, we've gone ahead and closed that poll, and I'm going to share your results. She's muted. I didn't know if she meant to be muted.
Part of the Hall framework that we need to get your input on. And this is the bottom part of the figure. So in terms of the organization of the Alliance, I wonder which of these components you feel you're doing best and which of these you most would like support with. So one more survey, double.
All right, we've gone ahead and launched the second survey, so go ahead and answer these questions. Once again, there's 2 questions. Make sure to select both and then hit submit. Okay, and we'll give you just a couple more seconds. Make sure you hit submit to transmit the results. All right, we're going to close this poll. And we'll go ahead and share those results.
Okay, great. So success in developing a shared mission among a variety of other factors, and the biggest challenge around communication structure. So that's definitely something that we're going to want to revisit and talk about how to do that particularly well. Some of these things I'll take notes of and make sure that we talk about specific strategies in the next webinar. Before we move on to the next framework, though, I want to point everybody's attention to the chat from Shirley McIver-Jones. If you all could take a quick look at that. I'm curious if anyone has any suggestions, any ideas how we could support Shirley, and if anyone has struggled with something like this. Shirley, if you could say a little bit more about, have you tried to raise this within your institution? And is there any flexibility about maybe letting you not use this logo or using a different logo? Anyone else have the same experience? Okay, we've got, and if you all are able to talk, I'd love for you to do so. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving. I guess keep chatting if you have more thoughts. I'd love to have you share with each other. But do feel free to shout out something if you have an idea to share. So the next framework is one that we have already presented to you when we were together last spring, and this is the collective impact framework. So I'm going to go a little bit faster through this. But again, I want to remind you that the stated objective of collective impact really tends to focus on creating large-scale social change. It's very action-oriented. We're engaging organizations and individuals affected by the issue of concern, the target issue that the Collective Impact Initiative is working on, as well as those influencing the issue. Our goal is to create sustained change in diverse sectors, and we place a special emphasis on public-private partnerships, in large part because that can really bring resources to this initiative. It was designed as a model for collaboration to address complex social problems. And it really also attempts to eliminate duplication of efforts while enhancing impact by attacking an issue from the multiple angles with coordination of partners, by getting them to coordinate, share lessons learned, and think about how they can act collaboratively. So again, these on the screen, you're seeing the tenets. The core tenets are principles of collective impact. These should be the things that your initiative is working toward. I have found these core principles to be helpful, even if your partnership is not going for this real sort of high-profile social change kind of action. I think these are often still useful principles that we want to try to have a common agenda, that we want to really know how we can measure our impact in a way that matters to all of us. We want to find the manageable number of data points that we can collect that are meaningful to everybody. We want to start thinking about how we can do things more synergistically. We need to have communication to support this ongoing learning and action, and that requires some administrative support. So we're starting to see some overlap in themes. And again, what's nice is that the collective impact model, and there's one of my favorite resources up here in the top right corner, and also will be made available to you, that talks about how these tenets can be sort of played out where the emphasis is over the life course of a collaboration. So again, I'll let you read this. We've talked a good bit about this, but I'm curious to know, for the collective impact framework, how well do you feel you're doing? What are the principles? So these, the first several, the sense of urgency for change, influential champions, understanding limitations of the status quo. These are sort of the preconditions for being able to make a collective impact. And then the bottom 5 are the tenets. So I'm curious to hear which components of the collective impact framework you feel you're doing most well and that you need the most help on. So we're going to launch another double survey.
Okay, we've gone ahead and launched a survey to keep moving forward and stay on time. I'm going to give you about a minute to respond. There are 2 questions, so make sure to answer both questions and click submit. Okay, we're going to get ready to close this. Just a couple more seconds. Go ahead and hit submit. All right, that poll is closed, and we'll go ahead and share the results.
Okay, great. So again, we see that we're doing well with the common agenda. And where we need the most support is influential champions, identifying influential champions and shared measurement, trying to think about how we can identify measures that are different partners, that matter to different partners. Okay, so again, in the chat box, keep sharing any suggestions or specific challenges that you have around either of these factors. Okay, we're running short on discussion time, so what I'm going to suggest is I'll move quickly, start to shoot out questions in the chat box, and what I would encourage us to do is to create sort of a way that we can all continue this dialogue. You know, it may be through a chat on a website, or another sort of discussion opportunity where you can join and talk through. We'll make a list of the components of these frameworks that you're struggling with, so that you can share ideas, because you all, I'm excited to see the suggestion coming out for Shirley, that you all have the best insights to help each other. Just need to create a forum for that. Okay, so the next model I want to present is the Community Coalition Action Theory, or the CCAT. This is a model for which we have probably the most empirical support. It's been the best studied. This is also a model that's really starting to put some of the pieces together that we've been talking about and seeing across some of the other models. So this is maybe one of the more comprehensive frameworks. Okay, and so what we see here is that we have a lead agency, which is really sort of motivating getting this coalition started, and can influence the breadth of representation. But that there's a lot about our processes, leadership and staffing, and structure of the collaboration that impact each other, as well as the collaborative synergy, this partnership synergy again, which is, you know, really comprising membership engagement, affects membership engagement, and the ability to generate pooled resources. Okay, and then it's this collaborative synergy that's really motivating or supporting what the outcome of the collaboration is. The ability to do effective assessment and planning, implement strategies that really lead to community change, but also at the bottom of this figure, the ability to really develop more community capacity. What they found is the most substantial evidence around shared decision-making and leadership leading to greater participation, shared decision-making, and how the leadership sort of engages partners. That idea, again, about adaptive leadership and leadership with an inclusive mindset, that really matters in terms of affecting participation of the partners. The staff's competence, supporting the partnership, as well as task focus and cohesion of the partnership, matter most in supporting members' satisfaction. Coalition size really affects participation and dollars leverage. So the bigger the coalition is, it's motivating to get people participating. And it also helps bring more resources in. The diversity of funding sources, if we can enhance that, can really grow new leadership opportunities and program expansion. And it's through that we can grow our partnerships. Dollars leveraged, so again, the resources that are available can also support new leadership opportunities and bring more partners in. Okay. So I want you thinking about this framework to reflect a little bit on, again, which aspects you feel are going the best for you and which are the most challenging.
Okay, the poll is open. You will have about a minute to complete your responses. Make sure you hit submit so that they can be counted. Okay, just another couple seconds. Please finish your choices and hit submit. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and end that poll. And here are the results.
Great. I'm very excited to see that you're able to get in a diversity of participants. And I think it's worth maybe sharing sort of who you all are bringing to the table, because you might even be able to bring in additional partners. Remember, more partners leads to more opportunities to grow funding. And one of the challenges, the biggest challenge, again, we're seeing sort of rise up is pooled resources, quantity and diversity of. So we're definitely we're going to want to share strategies around how to do this. Okay, we're going to go to the next framework, the last framework. This is Alan's model of council capacity. And one thing that's important to note here is that this is the article that talks about the objective of changing the text. So unless I said otherwise about the objective, the other models were more generally about trying to bring partners together to learn and develop shared action, support shared action. This one is kind of unique in that it's the one that's about trying to bring partners together to learn so that they can take action ideas back to their own organizations. So keep that in mind because it affects what you see here. This is a project where they aim to develop a more parsimonious, a more simple model of the factors that influence the success of collaborative efforts. And so you see that the models over time are getting more and more sophisticated. This is an attempt to try to step back and think about what really matters. There's a little bit of nuance in here that I think makes this one worth sharing with you. So, first of all, perceived member empowerment. I'm looking at the middle row, the middle column here. Perceived member empowerment, the generation of social capital and supportive community context. That's what they found to matter most in terms of these coalitions' ability to support their members, their partners going back and making meaningful changing the text in their own institutions. So what mattered most, again, let me repeat, because everything we've talked about was making sure that members, our partners, were empowered, that they had social capital. I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that, and that that the environment, the community context was supportive for creating institutional change back in their organizations. So features of the collaborative environment. Features of a collaborative environment, so leadership, inclusive climate, breadth of active membership, and the formality of council structure on the leftmost column of factors, those don't directly impact what they found. They don't directly impact the institutional change. What they do is they impact social capital. So it's a different way to think about what we're trying to achieve here. So when I say social capital built, what I mean here is that members grow their own ability to support change, their own social networks, connections with others but also outside of this partnership, that they can grow their own sphere of influence, their own knowledge. So our goal, in a way, if we think about this model, our goal of the folks like you all that are supporting collaboration is to try to equip the partners to have social capital, to grow their social capital, to grow their knowledge that useful, makes them useful back in their organization so that they can help their institutions appreciate the value of collaborating, but of also buying into the change that is suggested by the partners. And we also want to, knowledge is really key, and being able to transfer that knowledge from the partners back into their home organizations and making sure that they're growing connections can help, extend their reach to make change happen. So I thought this was a really neat way to think about what a partnership might be trying to do, how to set oneself up. Okay. So what here again is that the ability of members to act as change agents and the extent to which those in power support council efforts is very, very important. These can either lead to success or failure. So I also want you to be thinking about what you can do to empower your members, okay, and also to create a more supportive community context, because I think that's also something that you as leaders are going to need to think about how to do. So our last survey here, related to specific models, is which components of this model do you feel are going well that you're struggling with?
All right, that poll is launched. Please go ahead and go through as quickly as you can. We'll give you about a minute. Make sure you hit submit. All right, I'm giving you another couple seconds and then we're going to wrap up this poll. The poll is closed and here are your results.
Okay, so what we're doing well is inclusive partnership climate. Look at social capital. Social capital is an area where we need the most help. So that's interesting to me, because what I want you to do is be thinking about how, given what this model says, how you can work on the inputs to social capital. That's something that we clearly want to keep working on. Okay, moving ahead. So again, I want you to think about which model resonates. Just a reminder of the models. Okay, they're roughly in order. I wonder if you all could give us some feedback about which model you think resonates the most, because this will also help us know how to better support you.
Right, and the poll is open for this. We'll give you about a minute to respond to this as well. All right, just another couple seconds and then we'll close this poll. All right, we're going to go ahead and close that poll. And here are your results.
Okay, great. So there's a mix. I'm glad that these resonated in some way. Collective impact feels like it's got the most resonance, which is also great because that's the one that we've done the most training on. But we'll continue to to think about how we can help support your collaborations. What we didn't have time for, and I'm really sorry that we didn't have time for, is to get you all talking more. What I would propose that we do is really try to summarize we'll create a summary for you of the results in terms of where you felt like you were most struggling. Individually, I would encourage you to go and look at the papers that we're gonna provide to you related to the constructs where you felt like you were struggling, because there's tips in them that can be very helpful. But I think the best support is to be talking to each other. So we'll be thinking about how we can create more of a forum for you all to share challenges and help each other problem solve. With that, I want to thank you for your attention. I'm so sorry for my frog voice. And I hope this has been useful.
Thank you, Kristen, so much for your presentation and sharing those frameworks and models and giving us something to think about and to help us start, whether you don't have collaborations or you need help strengthening your partnerships. At least this gives us some foundation to start that. And I just want to remind everyone about the follow-up to this webinar is on February the 28th at 11:30. Again, that's the next webinar, what to put on the agenda for cross-sector collaboration, processes and activities to advance your system building work. So that's a follow-up to today's webinar. That is February 28th at 11:30. Please go to our website to register if you have not yet registered for that webinar. Again, thank you all for your participation and your comments and questions. And we'll follow up. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.